You know, I have a quote from the Bible. It says, "Good friends are better than gold." I truly believe that. And here today, I consider all of you friends. We are the community realtors. We are folks that live here in the Sedona Verde Valley. And we're here to learn and be more excellent at what we do and reach out to others. Give yourselves all a good hand. Okay, let's stand up and do our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. We got a couple of announcements. Lauren, she has been amazing. She's our Executive Vice President for SVVAR. And to you that are getting credit hours, here's Lauren.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. So if you're getting the CE credits today, we just need you to sign out and put the time in when you leave also. And that's it. Oh, yes. And she said up to 7 days to get the certificate emailed to you.
And that's going to be from our Prescott Area Association. Actually, Prescott is a school. Prescott Area Association of Realtors, along with PAR, and several of you are members with that. But to put this on and get credit hours, they reached out, and Lauren did, and sent in to our commissioner for credit hours and got it for us. So we can really thank our associations working together. Also, they set up there to tell you folks to not call them. The 3 hours of law credit will be provided within about 7 days to your email coming out of Prescott. Okay, I'm really excited about our first speaker. She said not to really do much introduction, but I'm going to do it anyway. She's our keynote speaker. This is Sarah Porter. She's the director of Kyle Center for Water Policy at ASU. Her credentials go way back many years. I'm going to read an article that she wrote that I found in a paper when she went to work for the Institute. And by the way, that was named after our Senator John Kyle, and the Morrison was also a senator. And they gave a lot of money to start that at ASU to research water and science for Arizona. She said, "I'm so excited to join the new center and help it to succeed in finding collaborative solutions to address our state's water challenges. Sarah has a broad understanding of both Arizona and regional water issues. She's also an attorney for many years. She graduated from Harvard University with a bachelor's degree and obtained her Juris Doctor from Arizona State University. She clerked in the federal appeal with Judge William Canby and was a litigator for Brown and Bain. She made a lot of money there doing litigation, but she decided to follow her heart, and she left her law career in 2006 because she wanted to contribute collaborative effort to address Arizona's natural resources and challenges. She's now dedicated to focus on the Kyle Center." Let's give her all a hand, Sarah.
Well, good morning. You all are so impressive to me to come out on this beautiful day, like one of our first nice days since a kind of brutal summer, and come to a nitty-gritty water talk. So congratulations to you all. And I also want to acknowledge Esther's work. She's a powerhouse, and she's amazing to put together this day. It took a huge amount of effort on her part, and she's definitely doing it to contribute to a collaborative effort to find solutions to water challenges. So can we just thank her for all of her effort? So I might have a resume that impresses some people, but I'm not good at coming up with titles. That's what I've decided. We already heard a little bit about where I'm from. Morrison Institute is a 42-year-old think tank based at ASU. We do nonpartisan policy research focusing on Arizona. The Kyle Center is part of Morrison Institute, named, yes, for Senator John Kyle, and what we do is focus on water policy. We've done the kinds of things you expect a water policy center to do. We produced a number of reports, one of which will be maybe two of which would be very interesting for you. This one and this one, more on that later. And we've also produced a hub of Arizona water policy and resources information called the Arizona Water Blueprint. And this is a place that you can go to find out much more about all the things that we're going to discuss today. We produced another tool that is less relevant to you, but it is modeling the potential impacts of shortages on the Colorado River for water users in Arizona. So my job is to give you the big picture of water in Arizona and kind of set the stage for our other speakers to speak more specifically about the challenges here in Yavapai County and the Verde Valley. So that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to give some basics about Arizona water, and then we'll talk about the big challenges, some solutions if there's time, and maybe another minute or two on the tools that the Kyle Center has to offer you. So these are some basics. Maybe this is old hat to you, but I always think it's good to make sure everyone's on the same page. So Arizona doesn't have just one water supply or just two water supplies. We have four main categories of supply: the Colorado River, in-state surface water, reclaimed water, which is water that was put into the wastewater treatment system and then treated up fit for purpose to be reused. And then we have groundwater. Now, groundwater is different from these other types of water because in an arid place like Arizona, it takes a long time to recharge aquifers. Of course, groundwater is that water that's underground in aquifers pumped up via wells. And we are very good at removing groundwater much faster than nature replenishes it. So we regard groundwater as a non-renewing resource, and we have some efforts to manage it that way. This is how water demand basically breaks in the state of Arizona. Agriculture is responsible for about over 70% of consumptive use of water. It might surprise you, given how many people have moved into cities and towns in Arizona, that their use added up is only about 22% of water demand in Arizona. And then the remaining sliver for industrial use mostly comes from power plants and mines. And this is going to be the most cheerful, happy thing that you hear today. And this is a story of water use in Arizona from the mid-50s until 2019. That's our most updated data. And basically this story is telling you that today we're using slightly less water as a state than we used in the mid-1950s. And yet our population, that's that line, has grown almost 6 times, and our economy has grown 21 times. Yesterday I did just for kicks, I said, if you did this in inflation-adjusted dollars, would this make a difference? And the fact is, it would make it is impressive. For inflation, if we just did inflation-adjusted dollars, we'd be down there in the 140s. So this is very impressive. The way Arizona got here is primarily by change in land use, changing agricultural land use to urban or municipal land use. And that's because typically the water use per acre for farms is much, much higher than the water use per acre for cities. One way you can think of it is that, let's say a field of cotton, it might need 3 to 6 acre-feet of water per year. Like 6 feet of water per acre per year. In a warm place with no regulations getting in the way, a farmer could put 10 acre-feet per acre on alfalfa and keep cutting it and keep harvesting alfalfa all year long, year after year. Cities, in contrast, use somewhere 3 to 4 fairly efficient single-family residences will use about 1 acre-foot of water per year. So this is to say nothing negative about farming. It's just a fact. If you've ever had a garden, if you are a farmer, if you've ever tried to grow a plant, you know those darn plants require water. And in a hot, dry place, you have to water your plants more. So this is mostly about a transition from farming, but it's also because we've gotten a lot more efficient with water use in every sector. So that's very fast. Those are the basics. Now we're going to go to what are Arizona's biggest challenges. Really, the biggest single challenge facing Arizona as a state is declining water supplies on the Colorado River. You remember from that first graphic, it's a very significant source of supply for the state. The total allocation of water for the state of Arizona is 2.8 million acre-feet of Colorado River water. I should have also said that an acre-foot is about 326,000 gallons of water. It's an acre of land with a foot deep of water, or roughly 326,000 gallons of water. So in Arizona, we have an allocation of 2.8 million acre-feet per year in a non-shortage year. 1.2 million acre-feet are allocated to water users right on the Colorado River, including Yuma County, where there's a lot of very significant agriculture, and the Colorado River Indian tribes by Lake Havasu, who also have a significant agricultural operation. And then 1.8 million acre-feet of that Colorado River water is conveyed via the Central Arizona Project Canal to water users from Phoenix down to Tucson and Pinal County in between. So that's how the Colorado River breaks, and we have been seeing declining supplies on the Colorado River. Persistently, over the last 20, 30 years, we've seen that the flows in the river and the levels in the big reservoirs, Lake Powell and Lake Mead, that hold the water for Arizona and California, Southern Nevada, and Mexico, those supplies are declining. There are many drivers of this decline, but one that is not a driver is population growth. It is simply a fallacy to think that the reason we're seeing declines in lake levels is population growth. In fact, the biggest cities that use Colorado River water throughout I guess I should have mentioned the Colorado Basin is 7 states and northern Mexico. It's a massive region. The largest water-using cities have actually been using less and less Colorado River water over the years, even as their populations grow. So the real reasons for the decline are hotter temperatures up in the upper Rockies that are some evidence that that region may be aridifying. It just may be getting hotter and drier for the long term. Also, the system was originally over-allocated. There was more water given out than we could reasonably expect to be produced every year, and we didn't feel it because many water users weren't actually taking their water out of the river. You know, you think about the Central Arizona Project, it's a super important project for the state of Arizona. It didn't make its first delivery until 1985, and it wasn't completed until around 1993. So that's one example of a water user, Central Arizona, that left its water in the reservoirs for some time. Of course, California took as much of it as it could during that time. So this is how Arizona is using its Colorado River water as of 2022. It was similar for 2023. The big point is that Colorado River water users, particularly in Central Arizona, were able to leave a significant amount of their allocations in Lake Mead. It's part of an ongoing effort and a series of negotiated agreements to help elevate the reservoir levels and keep the system from crashing. And I guess I included these slides to kind of underscore the point, and I don't know how relevant it feels for you because you're up here and you have your different water supplies, but the Colorado River is about 1/3 of the water supply for Phoenix, and it's more like almost 60% of the water supply for Tucson, for the areas, not for the cities proper. So it's a very significant source of water for Central Arizona, for the largest cities in Central Arizona. But this is what cities do with their Colorado River water. And this is to tell you that cities in central Arizona can still absorb cuts in Colorado River supplies without massive disruptions. What cities do with their Colorado River water is they send some of it to taps, but less than half. They send some of it for recharge, because we have an opportunity for cities to put water in the ground and get groundwater storage credits. They send some of their water to agriculture, and that's sending it to farmers who will use that surface water instead of groundwater. And once again, the cities get groundwater storage credits. And then they send some for turf, like golf courses mostly, some parks. And then again, this is another form of recharge. They exchange it with an entity to use surface water and leave water in the ground, so that in the future, the party that sent surface water can use some of the other entities' groundwater. Gets complicated, but basically this tells you that there could be additional shortages in Colorado River water to central Arizona that would not necessarily be as disruptive and catastrophic as you might think if you weren't looking at what cities are actually doing with their Colorado River water. Not to say we want a shortage, but we can withstand them. So that's big challenge number one. Big challenge number two has to do with groundwater. So in Arizona, we have 3 levels of regulation of groundwater. In these green areas, and that includes Prescott, but it doesn't include the Verde Valley, in these green areas, we have the highest level of regulation. The green areas are called active management areas. We have basically a cap and trade system on the use of groundwater for non-grandfathered water users. Who are the grandfathered users? Historic agricultural water users, historic industrial pumpers, but otherwise, for the most part, it's pretty complicated, but for the most part, we have a cap and trade system. We have metering and reporting of larger wells, and we have this orderly accounting system by our State Department of Water Resources, which keeps track of how much groundwater each entity has stored and how much they have in the bank. And we also have required conservation measures for every sector across the board, stepped up, becoming more rigorous every 10 years. In the orange blobs on the map, these are called irrigation non-expansion areas, or INAs. And in these areas, new irrigated agriculture is prohibited. Why pick on agriculture? Because agriculture uses groundwater faster than almost anyone else. Again, it's not to criticize agriculture, it's just a reality of the fact of that industry. It's very high water use. And so agriculture that was there before the INA is established is grandfathered. In many people's perspectives, creating an INA helps prolong or helps protect existing agriculture from the influx of big new agricultural demand that would use up the groundwater much faster. And then we have the rest of the state, including where you are, and all the rest of the state, the white areas, where there is virtually no regulation of groundwater. There's no required metering and reporting of groundwater use. If you own the land, you're allowed to drill a well and use the water as long as you don't waste it. And with limited exceptions, because in Arizona water, there's always an exception, but with limited exceptions, you're not allowed to pump groundwater out and transport it to other parts, to another basin in the state. So as a result of these kind of limited regulations, what we're seeing is the influx mostly of large-scale agricultural operations that are taking groundwater out much faster than previously experienced. And we're seeing, as you can see here, these are the subbasins of the state, and any subbasin that's a shade of pink or red is a subbasin that has a 20-year average declining water table of over 3 feet per year, which is significant. Happy to say that the subbasins that are blue are recovering basins. Those happen to be in active management areas. Anyway, by the way, this map is on the Arizona Water Blueprint. It's our groundwater level change map, and you can go to that map and you can find all kinds of cool stuff like what's happening with the wells next door to you. All right, now we're on our third big challenge, and that's the adjudication. And I'm going to leave it to our other speakers to drill into the details of the adjudication. I want to give you a few big picture thoughts. One is to say you're not alone. The adjudication is pretty much moving into the Verde Valley now, but it's been down in the San Pedro area for a long time. What is the adjudication? Well, in Arizona, surface water rights are regulated according to the law of prior appropriation. That means the first person to come along and use water from a river or stream for a beneficial use, meaning, not wasting it, for a farm, for residential use, for a mine, the first person who comes along has a higher priority than a later comer. That means that in a time of shortage, which is something we need to expect in a place like Arizona, the more senior water user is entitled to all of his or her water before the junior user gets to take water. Now, this is a beautiful system, theoretically. It's really, in my opinion, a law of economic security because it allows everyone to have a pretty good idea of their risks related to water supply. But this beautiful concept only works if you have a catalog of all of the water rights holders from senior-most to junior-most. And so we have these two big proceedings going, one in the Gila watershed, which includes the Verde River and the Salt River and the San Pedro and the Santa Cruz and the Agua Fria, most of the rivers that we can name if we live in Arizona. And we have another big one going on in the Little Colorado, which is very significant because the water supplies for the Navajo and Hopi tribes are at issue. Their people, communities who use water and claim water rights just as other water users, from cities to farmers to ranchers to national parks. Tribes are also entitled to water. More on that, I think, with our next speaker. So the one thing I want to leave you with is the adjudication of the Verde Basin is really going to be important for this region because it's going to provide clarity that right now you don't have. Nobody actually knows who has rights to how much water from the Verde River and its tributaries. We won't know until the adjudication is completed. And one of the reasons why it might be important to have clarity is that there may be a time when Cottonwood or Camp Verde or Clarkdale wants some financing to develop water infrastructure for one reason or another, maybe because of growth, maybe just because they need to replace infrastructure, maybe because something's changed in the current water system. And if you don't have certainty about what water you're entitled to, it's going to make it a lot harder to get the kind of financing or sell bonds for the water infrastructure that might be really important to the community. I'm going to be the only one who says that today, and I'm happy to elaborate on that. All right, we wrote a report about the adjudication. We tried to write a report that would help non-lawyers understand what the adjudication's about. It's called The Price of Uncertainty. It's available on our website, and it starts with a story, a touching story. So it should be hopefully a good read for you all. Fourth big challenge facing the state is water for growth. That's kind of always been the challenge facing the state, but we're starting to feel it more in the active management areas. Remember, I talked about a cap and trade system in the active management areas on the use of groundwater. And we have very rigorous rules for new developments within the active management areas. And one of those rules is that any new subdivision, and we're mostly talking about housing subdivisions, but it's other types of subdivisions too, of 6 or more lots, so think 6 or more homes that would be sold, must prove a 100-year supply of water before it can be built. That's called the assured water supply requirement. That applies throughout the active management areas. And most recently, our Department of Water Resources has been modeling the groundwater in the active management areas and concluding that the groundwater is essentially fully assigned, or in my way of thinking, allocated out. And so while the water's there in the ground, there's not extra water to support new certificates of assured water supply. Or to support, we have another type of regulation for water providers like cities where they can go and prove that they have a 100-year supply for their current demand and their projected growth within a period of time, usually 15 years. And they can get what's called a designation of assured water supply. So everything in green here is a designated water provider. The 15 largest water providers in the greater Phoenix area are designated. But at this point, our Department of Water Resources in June declared that all of the groundwater in the greater Phoenix area is fully allocated. And so while these designated providers can continue to have growth within their areas, places outside the designation can no longer get certificates of assured water supply. In other words, developers can't get a certificate of assured water supply based on the groundwater under the proposed development. The developer would have to go find a non-local groundwater supply of water to get a certificate to develop a new subdivision. This happened most recently in the Phoenix area. A couple of years ago, the department came to the same conclusion for Pinal County. It's caused quite a bit of consternation. It really has heightened the discussion about water for growth in the Phoenix to Tucson area. So what are the solutions? Well, I think this is one that's pretty, that's I think already pretty familiar to Arizonans who think about water. This slide, by the way, came from SRP. But essentially, Arizona cities are really good at reusing what we used to call wastewater. We now have other words for that. But cities that have fairly robust water portfolios and have fairly built out demand can go very far, even in the time when there's a potential shortage of Colorado River water, by pushing water use outdoors down and maximizing reuse of water indoors. Water used outdoors, as this graphic shows you, it says, I actually argued with my friend Chris McJunkin at SRP, saying we shouldn't say water lost, we should say environmental services. Water that we use outside leaves the system. The city no longer can manage that, but water used inside can be recovered, reclaimed, and treated to whatever purpose. So in January, the city of Phoenix announced that it's starting work on what is now called an advanced water purification plant, where water that's treated up to wastewater will be treated up to a high standard and then sent to a plant to be treated all the way up to drinking water standards. The impact of this advanced water purification technology is that it can reduce Phoenix's reliance on Colorado River water by 50%. Think how significant that is. So this is an important tool for any municipal water provider. I should have started out by saying demand management. Just getting people to use less water is also a very important tool. But that's not all. We don't have to we should all be using water as efficiently as possible, but that conservation will not get Arizona to where it wants to be, at least by some people's perspectives. And so legislative session before last, the legislature set up a fund, really 3 funds, to fund water augmentation, the importation of new water supplies to the state, to fund water systems to ensure that they are as efficient as possible, and also to fund conservation projects that would get us to even greater places of efficiency. So this is a real shot in the arm to have such large amounts of funding available to make Arizona do water better. And it's run by an old, highly regarded agency, the Water Infrastructure Finance Authority. So they're already granting out from their conservation grant funds, or at least they're already taking applications. And what are the ideas for new water, for the importation of water? Well, this isn't the entire list, but this is probably the top contenders. One is that the Colorado River Indian Tribe, which has a big allocation of Colorado River water, and they're near Lake Havasu on the western border. The tribe just received authorization to lease some of its Colorado River water, and that water could be conveyed via the CAP and then leased by water users from Phoenix to Tucson. SRP is doing a clever pilot project to store a little extra water in Roosevelt Dam, its largest dam on the Salt River. And if this pilot project is successful, it's going to be kind of like free water. It will not require additional infrastructure. It's really quite amazing. It's a matter of studying it to make sure that we're leaving enough space in case we have a biblical flood. But I think it will go through and be a new supply of water. Whoops. SRP is also working with stakeholders to look at enlarging Bartlett Dam, which is one of the 2 dams on the Verde River. We'll probably hear more about that in a bit. But this would require an investment in infrastructure, unlike the Crit lease and Roosevelt Dam modification, but still a significant new supply of water. I mentioned that there are some subbasins in the state that are exempt from the prohibition on the transportation of raw groundwater. One of those exempted basins is the Harquahela, which is right next door to Buckeye, one of the 2 communities most impacted by the new limitation on new certificates of assured water supply. And both Buckeye and the town of Queen Creek have already invested in Harquahela groundwater, and they're just waiting for the infrastructure to happen so that it can be moved over to water users there. We're really good at reusing water, reusing almost 95% of wastewater. Southern Nevada is in the same league. Southern California is not, at least not Los Angeles. Los Angeles treats 160,000 acre-feet of effluent. Think of that, 640,000 homes worth of water, and pours it into the ocean. So I know, it's incredible. So, so CAP and Southern Nevada Water Authority are working with Los Angeles, with Southern California, to see if they could co-invest in reuse to get LA to be up to date, like all the rest of us, in reusing some of that water. And then maybe there would be an exchange of Colorado River water, or Arizona would take less of a shortage and get some water through that. And finally, you've all probably heard about ocean desalination. This is a concept that's out there. It's not a joke. Everybody who's involved in it understands that the ocean is not in Arizona. The coast is that we're looking at is in another country. And so the concepts that are being developed really take that into account. One concept is that Arizona would pay for the construction and operation of an ocean desalination plant. People always say near Rocky Point. And that then Arizona water users would take an exchange of some of Mexico's Colorado River water. How would that water get to central Arizona? The good old CAP. Another concept that's being promoted by an Israeli company is to actually build a pipeline that would run from Rocky Point all the way up to a CAP pump station, the Hassayampa pump station, and the water would then be poured into the CAP and then conveyed down. So that's another concept that has legs. We'll see. To me, this water is so much harder to accomplish. It's much more expensive. There are many more permitting issues in the way. I see all these happening before an ocean desal plant ever results in water for Arizona water users' benefit. Might it happen in 20 or 30 years? I certainly wouldn't bet that it would not happen. I think there's a good likelihood that it would. The problem is, remember what cities are doing with their Colorado River water? You know, the reality is we can have a lot of population growth and a lot of economic growth with comparatively modest supplies of water. We're not trying to build out a massive new agricultural region, right? We're bringing in more water to make sure that we have water to serve growing cities and growing economies that are not agricultural based. And so some of these smaller solutions, combined with maximizing reuse and conservation, can get us very, very far. So I'll just mention that we have the benefit of really great infrastructure down in central Arizona. We have the CAP Canal, and CAP and SRP are developing interconnections. There's one that's been going, they're developing another one going the other way to allow water to be moved between these very significant water systems. And here are my big conclusions. I think the first one I keep making, but essentially, I think Arizona cities have already proven themselves to be good at tackling water problems. They're prepared to adapt to the water problems that are coming their way. Water will probably get more expensive, but we're getting along, with less and less water. I mean, when I was a little kid, I remember when people talked about how gasoline in Europe cost $1 a gallon, and we all thought, how could anyone spend $1 a gallon on gasoline? And now we don't even blink. Well, I don't. When, it's like it's under $4, that's amazing. So we're able to go farther on less. Deeper cuts in the Colorado River supplies may happen, and the impacts of those cuts will vary from city to city. And then finally, groundwater-dependent rural areas in Arizona are vulnerable and will face challenges. I think I'm running out of time. I've already mentioned the Arizona Water Blueprint. This is what the landing page looks like. You can look at our big multi-layer map that's everything you need to know about water resources and policy. You can go to our groundwater level changes app and see what's happening in subbasins that you care about. We have a whole lot of tools related to the Colorado River. And then we have this area that talks about water issues in depth, including the adjudication, which you'll hear more about in a moment. And if you sign up for updates, you will receive very few emails from us and not from anyone else. But every month we have an office hours session where you can come in and ask how to use the blueprint. We usually try to talk a little bit about how we use the blueprint to think about an Arizona water issue that's current. And we're starting a new thing called Ask Me Anything, where you can just come in and ask any question about water. And we're happy to take up that. So I encourage you to go to the blueprint and sign up for updates. And see, I learned how to make QR codes, Jim. And this will be in the PowerPoint that'll be sent out to you. So I think we're going to take questions after the next speaker. Thank you very much for all your attention.